Welcome, everybody. We've got a full house again tonight. It's been a while since we've had a full house. What was the last one, Milton, that we had a full house on?
What was
Was
it?
it Nightmare on Elm Street?
It might have been, yeah.
I think
Or
so.
how many people did we have again for The Exorcist?
That was just
That was
the
just the
three of
three of us.
us.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it'd
I
be
think it
Nightmare
was
on Elm Street. And
I think it was Hellboy.
yeah, but I mean
Uh,
just for the movie reviews.
oh yeah.
Yeah, which ironically enough, of course, also had Doolittle. So I've had this one planned for a while. We got a new guest appearance. What do you prefer to go by online?
Just call me by my name. I don't mind.
All right. So this is my oldest friend. I've known her since I was in the second grade. Haven't seen her in a while, so it's cool that we're able to do this. So as always, when we have a new guest, we're going to pick on them for a little bit. So Sarah, I mean, I know we both share a love for like the Evil Dead movies, but what other kind of horror movies or games and other shit do you like in your spare time?
I don't actually. Unfortunately, I've fallen off the wagon on horror films. I'm glad that I'm doing this because I'm getting back into it. But I do like classics like The Exorcist and yeah, movies like that. And then like zombie films. Those are really cool too.
Hell yeah.
But yeah.
Have you ever
That's-
seen
that's
Return
really
of the
it.
Living Dead?
No, I
Oh
haven't.
my god.
Needs to be
Yeah.
on my list for sure.
Hell yeah. Yeah, Milton and I went through a bunch of zombie movies. What was it, like last month?
Yeah, I would say, yeah, not too recently, I would say. Yeah.
Time gets all mixed up when you do this every week. I can't remember how long ago that was.
Yeah, we did the Romero films. We did bastardized remakes of the Romero films too.
Oh.
You know.
Yeah, there's a 2008 remake of Day of the Dead. Don't watch it. It sucks.
I can be kind, I guess, to the Zack Snyder one, but
The Zack
yeah,
Snyder one is pretty good. Like, it's barely a remake, right? It's just in the mall. But we're getting off track here a little bit. So we are here to discuss, as always, 2 movies every week. We're doing Sinister and Evil Dead. I said those in completely the wrong order. We're going to start. We usually go by release order, which of course Evil Dead would come first. I guess just a couple of things to bring up real quick is we got a trailer for the Chucky show. It looks good. I'm excited for that. And we got a trailer for the Day of the Dead show. And I'm going to judge Milton directly on this one because you love Day of the Dead.
I do.
Have you seen this trailer yet?
I don't want to. I'm not sure I could take it, man.
They turned it into a sitcom.
Oh, we did talk about this.
Did we?
And it's
Okay.
still awful. Yeah.
Yeah. Why? Fuck you, sci-fi.
No, Siffy.
Oh, I'm sorry, Siffy. Fuck you, Siffy. That Child's Play show better be fucking good to make up for it. But anyway, we'll start off with the Evil Dead because there's not really much else to go on about this week. Wanted to briefly mention those trailers. And I'm gonna let Sarah take on this one to tell us about the Evil Dead, since that's I would assume one of your favorite movies in the genre.
So I guess just start off by giving a synopsis.
Yeah.
A man and his friends go into the woods in a cabin, and they find some sketchy things in the basement, and somebody plays a tape, and then the rest is history.
That's still better than Austin's synopsis of it.
Yeah. History was made. Sam Raimi made his career. Bruce Campbell made his, and no one else.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of them didn't even act for a long time after this movie, which we'll get into because the production of this movie is almost as fascinating as the movie itself. I don't know how. I know like Doolittle and has probably almost as much, if not more, knowledge of that than I do. Yeah, this is a wonderful like prototype to Evil Dead 2, which is the best horror movie ever made. So Sarah, we've never actually talked about Evil Dead. We've known each other all these years, but I don't think we've ever actually just talked about Evil Dead. So, what do you
I
think
don't
of
think so
Evil
either.
Dead? God damn.
I think, as a minor, I studied production and film, and I think it's one of the best like productions because it started out as a short film, a college like short film, and then it turned into this like iconic franchise. And of course, Bruce Campbell is just awesome. So I really like him, and Sam Raimi went on to make a really good career for himself. But like it's definitely number one on my list for zombie films, and I even really like the video games that came out. Oh gosh, that was a long time ago. Like
That was a long time
Xbox,
ago.
Yep.
the Xbox games. So
I'm actually planning to do a playthrough of one of those for the channel. I found a way to play it.
I still have the physical copies of them.
Oh, that's awesome.
All that is
Yeah,
Because those are impossible to find.
man.
That's cool.
yeah. I have
Yeah, I'm
all
gonna
of my
play
PlayStation
Regeneration.
games. Yeah, that's a good one for sure.
Yeah, I remember
normally
those
just-
games many times when I was hanging out at your house. I'd be like, I kind of want to play this, but I know I'm gonna have to leave in like 20 minutes, so I'm not gonna start.
Yeah, it's those games are super hard too. So just a heads up, like you're gonna be
I used
getting
to own
frustrated.
Regeneration. Yeah.
They're fun though. I really recommend them if you can find them, for sure.
Have you looked at the new game?
There's a new game.
There is. It is a multiplayer only game, but it looks super fun. You get to team
I
up
don't
with
know,
friends
I
against
haven't-
Deadites. Remind me after the podcast. I'll show you. I'll send you the trailer.
Yeah,
But-
that sounds fun. I'd play that.
It does look cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, this is amateur filmmaking at its best, and I don't mean that as an insult. Like, I'm amazed that for $300,000 we got a movie that looks like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Although I will
amazing,
say, I
honestly.
watched the recently released 4K transfer. One of the unfortunate parts of the 4K transfer is it makes the gloriously bad special effects even worse. My new favorite
Really?
shot, my new favorite shot is when they're like hitting Cheryl into the cellar, but it's clearly a dummy.
well, yeah.
Wow.
And I'm not knocking the movie in any way. It's just one of those unfortunate things. As you move into higher and higher fidelity of film,
Yeah,
you're gonna
definitely puts a
notice more and
spotlight
more
on-
of these.
Yeah, I watched it through the HD on PlayStation Network, and I didn't like have any issues like that. But I can understand though if it's like a 4K transfer, like that's like a ton of generational gap right there. I can understand that.
Now, not all of the special effects are bad, but you can tell when they got too ambitious for their budget. I think all the
Yeah.
actual blood, like when I'm terrible at names, but the one that he tries to bury, like tries to like claw his leg, that looks good. All the blood that gets splashed on him, all that stuff looks great. It's when they try to go like, oh, here's a dummy for a demon getting decapitated or some shit. It's like, yeah, that thing is not moving even before you decapitated it. Also, an interesting performance from Bruce Campbell because this is not like the Ash that got popular.
No.
He's kind of nothing in this movie. Like, if we're just being honest.
Bruce
Yeah.
Campbell said that he couldn't act when he was doing this movie. He looks on this an embarrassment sometimes.
Yeah, I remember hearing him say that. Well, I mean, let's be honest. None of them in this movie can really act, but the movie like overcomes that.
Mhm. Yeah, I think Bruce Campbell in this movie, this version of Ash, he's much more low key, and he's also much more just like just kind of like a guy. Like Ash later on will be known as like just a total ass. You know what I mean? Which is hilarious, and I love that. But in this movie, he's much more of just I don't know. He's kind of like the straight guy. You know what I mean? Like he's like like the other person is much more of an ass. I can't remember his name.
Scotty.
Because yeah, that's right. He's a bit more kind of juvenile and foolish.
Well, I've always ran with the theory that each of these movies is from Ash's point of view, and as he
Yeah.
gets crazy, like gets more desensitized and like starts snapping, that's when the movies start to get like crazier. So this franchise is really just like the descent of madness of one human being.
That's
Until you
funny.
get to Ash versus Evil Dead, and he's just like he's done. Like there's nothing resembling sanity left in there at all.
Mhm.
No.
So Milton,
Great, I love it.
I know you're becoming more adjusted to the horror genre, but you're still
Yep.
relatively new. So I'm interested to see what you think of this.
Well, I've already seen it. I saw this quite a while ago because I knew about Bruce Campbell, mostly because I knew about Spider-Man. The Spider-Man movies under Sam Raimi's direction, and Bruce Campbell would often guest star and cameo in those movies. I had also seen Burn Notice, so Bruce Campbell is like one of the main, co-stars of that show. And so I just kept going with. I looked under his IMDb and said, "The Evil Dead." What's that? I looked at the history. Oh, alrighty. You know what? I want to see this. And then I saw Evil Dead, Evil Dead 2, and then, yeah. After that, I kind of just started watching the rest of the stuff that he was in. Ash is also in Poker Night at the Inventory 2 on Steam.
What? Like what
Wait,
is that?
so really?
It's a poker night game simulator essentially, but featuring like the personalities of like 4 larger than life fictional characters like Brock Samson from the Venture Brothers, Ash from the Evil Dead, Sam and
Right,
Max, series Sam and Max,
Interesting.
and Claptrap from Borderlands. But
I kind
in
of want
any
to play it just based on that. But anyway,
Yeah, but in any case, so I'd seen this a while back. I was weirded out at first, especially by tree rape. That was certainly something to adjust to for the first time. But
Yeah.
but other than that, which I thought was a little out of place, but whatever. I I really enjoyed the rest of it. I loved the gore and the action. The acting was okay, but I was just generally interested in this lower budget like gore exploitation kind of feel to it. I thought it was a fun movie. It ended in a very weird way, so much so that I really wanted to see the sequel because apparently it takes up right after, kind of. But
yeah,
it's,
kind of.
it's weird. But yeah,
Yeah, this whole series has a problem with continuity, but it's also just like whatever.
yeah. Me and John have said before, you don't really need to get into the Evil Dead franchise by seeing the first one first. You could do Evil Dead 2 and that would be fine. But I still like this movie. I would still recommend it to people, just with the
Yeah.
understanding that it's not the standard by which we judge this franchise as a whole. That's Evil Dead 2. This is
Yeah,
just a proof of concept thing.
I always tell people, oh, the way I get people into Evil Dead is I show them the second movie, and then I say, this is the best, and I think the one that I would watch first, but I highly recommend watching the first one because it is such an important film in I think like horror history and also just like film history in general because their journey, which we'll probably talk about later, like they kind of come from the traditional kind of Hollywood system. That's not how they broke in, so that whole thing is very important in that way. And also it is really good. It's just that Evil Dead 2 is just like
So much
the
better.
more accessible. Yeah, and it's much better in my opinion. It's like,
Yeah. Yeah, I always tell people start with 2, and if you're curious, because I know not everybody cares about film history. If you're curious, watch the first one just to see what a bunch of kids in the woods can do.
oh, that's fair.
Very competent kids in the woods can do.
Very well, yeah. I mean, because when I say this is kind of like it's a good like prototype for Evil Dead 2, it's in multiple ways, right? Because he starts with experimenting with the camera, but it's nothing quite like the energy he has in 2. Bruce Campbell doesn't know what he's doing in this movie for the most part. He's just some guy. And I don't mean that in a bad way, because this movie, like I said, is still very good. But everything that is started here is perfected in 2, I think.
Yeah. And Raimi's like camera movement, like it's still really fun. You can tell it has like that distinct Raimi feel. But I noticed that the camera is much more shaky this time in a lot of shots, which is
They
interesting.
couldn't
Like it's
afford to
not
like
as steady.
stand for the camera. It's just
He
some
actually-
guy.
Yeah.
Didn't have the budget for the rigs for the cameras, so he had to basically run through the woods with the camera attached to him.
Well,
And
on like a
that's
2x4, I
why-
think, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like 2x4. And they also had a lot of people like do different angles and do shaky. Like he developed the shaky technique, and it kind of just stuck in Hollywood. And it's actually really cool because that's not what they intended to do, but it ended up, setting a precedent for horror films for forever now.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so turn Sarah. How did you find the Evil Dead movies? Just out of curiosity.
Oh, my dad. I was probably like 10 when he's like, let's watch this movie. And we watched all three of them, and he loves Bruce Campbell. So I have a lot of Evil Dead merchandise. I have an Army of Darkness t-shirt that he bought me a long time ago, and just kind of, we still quote it. So it's just kind of a father-daughter thing that we talk about occasionally. So
Oh yeah, that's awesome.
that's where I learned. Yeah.
So we've heard where Milton and Sarah found it. Doolittle, where did you first discover Evil Dead?
Actually, kind of similar to how Sarah found it. My father exposed it to me. Just like out of nowhere, like I was just like playing with like some action figures, and he was like, "Joshua, do you want to see something really cool?" And I said, "Yeah." And then he was like, "Here, check this out, Army of Darkness." And I watched Army of Darkness, and I fell in love with it. I thought it was awesome. Yeah, and I think that I think Evil Dead 2 is still my favorite of the trilogy, but Army of Darkness is wonderful. It's a really good movie. It's a lot of fun. So that's something again that is actually something I share with my father. Is Evil Dead and just and Bruce Campbell in general. My dad has the book If Chins Could Kill. I think is what it's called, with the Bruce Campbell book, which I have not read, but I really want it. So no, he's a huge fan.
Yeah, for sure. I'm gonna third this. I found the VHS copy at my dad's house, and it had like the original poster, that really awesome skull. And I was like, I don't know what the fuck this is, but I've got to watch it. And I was like, after it was over, I was like, I don't know what I just watched, but I'm pretty sure it was awesome. And then as I grew older, of course, it just became my favorite movie. I have to say, I actually think the first one is my least favorite, even though it's probably the one I respect the most. But if I'm just going to put one on, it's not going to be this one.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's a tier of like escalating quality essentially.
Yeah, it's like
But
Evil
2
Dead,
and 3,
Evil Dead. You got Evil Dead 2, and then you got like Army of Darkness, like right, kind of
Yeah,
just above the first
with those tears, yeah, it's fair.
one.
Yep. Props to the dads.
Yeah, and I mean, the most impressive thing about this movie as well is that it never feels boring. Raimi knows how to pace a scene. Although I kind of agree with Raimi, I wish he had cut that tree rape scene because it's like, why is that there?
Yeah.
I
Well,
guess he wanted to establish how evil could come about and possess someone, I suppose, but he could have done that a different way.
yeah. Well, there is someone that wasn't Raimi's choice actually. That was someone else. That was someone else's choice, and the rationale
Okay.
behind it was they wanted to hurt the audience, I think. But I agree with so Raimi actually said that he cut that scene.
I read that somewhere. I don't remember where now. I'll have to look into it. But I remember him reading he regrets
Yeah.
having that in the movie.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. It was a bit kind of out of place. It was interesting the way they did the effect, because like they did it in reverse or whatever with the tree, so they were actually pulling the branch, and then they just did it in reverse so that it looked like it was climbing up. I thought that was interesting, but I don't. That's kind of a weird scene, in my opinion.
Yeah, it
Effects,
doesn't even
though.
tonally. It doesn't fit with the rest of the movie. I don't think.
No, it's way
That
too dark, and too serious.
Yeah, because you got like these demons that are. I mean, the movie itself is relatively dark, but like the Deadites themselves are never like dark and serious. They're always just there to mess with people.
Yeah.
Most notably, my least
Isn't that
favorite, the
Ash's-
laughing girl,
Isn't that Ash's girlfriend too?
sister.
Sister? Oh, that makes sense about hurting the audience, for
Yeah.
sure.
It certainly made me
Personal
feel uncomfortable.
connections. Yeah.
Yeah. Although it is interesting as well because I think there's an argument to be made that Scott is the main character for almost the first half, and it doesn't really become Ash until he's just the last one left. But
I did kind of
Yeah.
feel the same way the first time I saw it too, so I can understand that.
then the second half is just Sam Raimi beating the shit out of Bruce Campbell.
Pretty much.
Oh yeah.
Like, has anybody like checked those two into therapy? Because like Sam Raimi really enjoys hurting Bruce Campbell.
Yeah.
Well,
or
I think the
making him
trick
say
is that
his
Sam
true
Raimi.
lines.
Yeah, I think the trick is that Sam Raimi is just a really, really upstanding guy. That's why they're okay with it, I think.
Because I forgot how much punishment Ash takes in this movie. Like he gets beat with that like fireplace poker. His leg gets all scratched.
I mean that's the sacrifice you make, I guess, with making a movie like this.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
I mean the making of this movie, like we mentioned, was notoriously difficult.
Yeah.
Like the actress we mentioned, the one that plays Cheryl, I was looking on her wiki page. She didn't star in another movie after this until like the mid 2000s.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's rough.
Milton,
and they
have
made
you
a
looked
lot of
into the making
mistakes
of
during-
this?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, you're good, dude. Sorry, but have you looked into the actual making of this movie?
A little. I know about more from the acting standpoint. I know that they're it initially secured like $90,000 to work on the Evil Dead, but it was like the stop motion animations were rather expensive, as well as like a lot of the prosthetic makeup. There were a lot of like financial difficulties that just happened throughout this movie. Yeah. Stephen King gave the rave review of the movie, which apparently is how New Line Cinema, picked up on distribution for it. So that's
Yeah,
pretty exciting.
I'm actually glad you mentioned that because I honestly would have forgotten. Stephen King is what saved this movie. Like without that review from Stephen King, this movie would have just been in a dumpster somewhere, like a forgotten 80s movie.
Yeah, it probably would have gone direct to DVD. Or got direct to video.
It was just
I didn't even correct you. I was just like, I know what he means. But yeah, I've always loved that it was Stephen King that saved this movie.
Yeah.
And another interesting tidbit, Joel Cohen of the famous Coen brothers was an assistant director on this film.
Oh yeah.
So the Coen brothers lived with Sam Raimi for a long time. I think they even were college roommates at some point. So yeah, they have a lot of history working together and doing stuff together.
Oh, that's cool.
Holly Hunter was there too, I believe, as a roommate.
Yeah.
But yeah, what I was more referring to about the behind the scenes is like that cabin that they're in had no like ice insulation, so they were using like toxic kerosene heaters. Those contacts that you're only supposed to wear for like an hour at a time, they'd have to wear them for 8 to 10 hours a day, probably longer. Like they were miserable that entire shoot. In fact, I have heard, and I've never been able to notice this, maybe because of the makeup or if they're just doing their jobs really well. There are certain reshoots where you can tell it's not the same actor because Sam couldn't get them back for reshoots because they're like, no, I'm done. Like, I'm not coming back for that shit.
Yeah.
Which is
fake
understandable. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to add on to that, they used real bullets, firearms, which are not supposed to do traditionally, and they also used real glass for like the windows, which is insane for like other like productions, but like they somehow were able to do that. Like, they didn't know any better. It was the first time doing it,
You're just doing the best with what you got. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a miracle this movie came out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely with that Stephen King, this thing would not have gotten picked up at all. I'm surprised they were even brave enough, even with Stephen King's review, to still, distribute this movie.
As
There was
big as
definitely a
Stephen
lot of
King was in
backlash.
the 80s, I can definitely understand New Line picking it up. Because you got to remember as well that this is before Nightmare on Elm Street. New Line is still
Yeah.
desperate for a hit.
That's true. That makes sense.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Freddy hadn't
Yeah.
quite built that house yet.
There was a lot of backlash because this was upon the release of this film, because this was still during the whole like satanic panic kind of thing that was going on in the UK and over in this country as well. So
Video nasties, yeah.
yeah, that sort of thing. I think
Which
there's
next week's movie is one of those is about that, which is interesting.
Oh, fascinating.
Just a quick plug there. I'll say more at the end of the show. But yeah, I mean, the most surprising thing about this movie is it came out in '81. Like, it's kind of the bridge between the '70s horror and the '80s horror. Because '80s horror, we were allowed to go more places, whereas '70s horrors, I don't want to say tame, but it was not about the blood and the gore and the shock factor.
but yeah, this is we watched an X-rated film, guys.
Oh,
On PSN, it's NC-17, which is interesting. But I think when it came out, it was X. Is that correct? Wow.
Yep.
Interesting.
probably.
Which by
Yeah.
today's standards,
Okay.
this is a fairly tame movie. If
Yeah. I agree.
And in the video game, he actually, because Bruce Campbell did the voices for the video game, he actually mentioned something about that, about it being an X-rated film. It's actually funny because if you don't catch it, you're like, "What is he talking about?"
yeah,
Then you learn later on. Oh, that's what he was talking about. Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting how that works out with the ratings, and it is interesting because I feel like there's there's nothing in here that wouldn't be in an R-rated movie now. But I guess at the time it was just like so ahead of its time in a lot of ways that it is what it is.
I agree with you because, I mean, yeah, it is a little tame in places, but some of the stuff, like the just sheer amount of blood at the end, I think would be more akin to the late '80s or even nowadays. I think
Yeah.
some movies now aren't even as like gory as that movie is,
Hmm.
and they may have better looking gore, but pick your poison.
Yeah.
My favorite is when he pokes the one Deadeye's eyes out and it's just red paint, clearly red
Oh, the eye
paint.
gouging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's uncomfortable to watch, but definitely.
I'll say it just makes me laugh because I can tell it's
Yeah.
red paint. It's like bright red paint. It doesn't look like blood at all.
Yeah. There's always something in movies that makes me like super like squeamish. And that's not an exception, but I understand where you're coming from. That is really funny fact that they did.
Now, I will say this movie does make me squirm a little bit at the end when it's just that mess of claymation. I was just like, oh, that's gross.
Oh yeah, when the cockroaches come in.
The cockroaches and that
Jesus
like
Christ.
green puke looking stuff.
Yeah, man, it's
I'm just
nasty.
like, oh, gross.
Yeah, they did a good job with the
Yeah.
effects there.
Yeah. Well, does anybody else have anything they want to cover overall? I mean, the story itself is pretty simple. As like Sarah said, a bunch of teens go to a cabin, 4 of them get possessed and beat the shit out of Bruce Campbell for an hour and a half. Like,
Here's a question. Could this have worked as a standalone film?
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
Yeah.
it wouldn't be the franchise it is today, but it'd be one of those like, oh, you remember The Evil Dead? That was pretty good.
Yeah.
I guess I wondered because with the way that it kind of leaves the audience, especially at the end, leaving you in suspense. I mean, it's almost as if they wonder whether or not the sequel, was intended. I mean, granted, nobody knew exactly, of course, the production, but just based on how the story is told, I don't know.
Well, no, like there was Raimi didn't even want to do a sequel up to the point where they were starting talking about a sequel. That sequel is just because Raimi's career was down like in the toilet.
Yeah, because
He just likes
Wave.
he likes bad endings in his films. A lot of his non-Evil Dead movies that aren't like superhero movies have that. Drag Me to Hell. That's
Really
that's
didn't
just a
watch that.
Raimi thing. But yeah, I think if this had been the only one, it would have been like, hey, you remember Evil Dead? It's pretty good, it's classic, but it wouldn't be like, hey, you remember Evil Dead? You remember Ash? Remember Deadites?
Oh,
Maybe on the
those
same level.
zombies, right?
Remember
It's probably on the same level
zombies?
as like
Remember
Texas
Bruce
Chainsaw
Campbell?
Massacre.
What's up, Doolittle?
I think it'd probably be like seeing the same way of like Texas Chainsaw Massacre scene or whatever. If like that movie was left as like just its own thing, I think that's probably what it would be like. I think.
Yeah.
I suppose.
There's some parallels between the productions as well.
See, I think if there had just been a one and done, it would have been like those. Would have been like those like some of those 80s slashers where we just got a one and done, and anybody who's in the genre is like, hey, that's classic. It's well received. It probably would have been slightly above that, but maybe not as big as Texas Chainsaw.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But interesting question. I've never thought about that just because the sequel's better in every like conceivable way.
Well, don't worry. I think about it, so you don't have to.
I will fire you. Bring Sarah on to replace you.
Yeah.
Oh God. Doolittle, Sarah, any final thoughts about this movie before we move on to rating?
I guess I was thinking about it. Just interesting trivia for the movie. This is where we're introduced to the Oldsmobile that's in every Sam Raimi film. So it's something that people don't realize until they see a movie like Quick and the Dead, and they're like, "Why is there an Oldsmobile here in the Wild West?" But okay. But yeah, no, that's always something I think about for the first film. Is that's our first introduction to it. And its
I still
cameo.
gotta see that.
Completely forgot the Oldsmobile was in The Quick and the Dead, and now I remember.
Yeah. Most famously, Sarah, have you seen Ash vs. Evil Dead?
Yeah, I have.
Okay. I love the episode where it gets all Christine, like possessed.
Yeah.
It's awesome. I'm glad you mentioned that. I completely slipped my mind. Every time we do a show, we'll end, and I'm like, oh, I should have mentioned that. So I appreciate that. Doolittle, anything else to add?
No. Just I had a fun time going back to it. I don't go back to this one as much as the sequels. That's another thing I wanted to mention, actually. So it was fun to revisit it again.
Yeah, same.
Yeah.
All right. So Sarah, we usually end with the movie just giving it a general out of 5 rating. It's kind of superfluous, but it's just to kind of give our general thoughts. I still can't speak English. I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. This is a masterpiece in amateur filmmaking. It's important history-wise, but it is the weakest of the trilogy, I think, at least. Now, I know there are 2 camps, right? Like, there's the Evil Dead 1 is better, and there's the Evil Dead 2 is better. I know a few people who prefer the first one. That's doesn't make sense to me, but I think it's the tone, right? Like, because that's a more serious, in quotation marks, movie. But yeah, it's a good movie. Watch it, but watch the sequels first, so you know what the franchise actually is.
Yeah.
We'll move on to Sarah. She's like, fuck.
Are we introducing the next film or?
No, you're giving it a score out of 5.
Oh, I'm sorry. Gosh.
She's been like that her whole life.
I go on to the next thing before the first is even finished. It's a habit. So I give this 2 different scores. I want to give it a 5 out of 5 for production creativity because they literally had nothing and studio backing wasn't that great. And they did great things with it, which led to 2 other films. And then I want to give it like a 3.5 out of 5 for just overall film, like plot and everything, because 2 is definitely more interesting than 1. 1 is a little, it's more serious, and we don't get the true Ash that we know today.
Groovy. Milton.
Yeah, I say a 4 out of 5. It's not a perfect movie, but it does a lot of stuff really well. It definitely the franchise comes into its own in 2, but a lot of the skeleton of what makes 2 great is present in 1. So, yeah.
Yeah, I just watched Evil Dead 2 the other night. Now after watching this, I want to watch that again. Doolittle. What is your score for this film?
Like a 4 out of 5, I think. I think that's fair. Yeah, that's fair. Because Evil Dead 2 is like a 5, and Army of Darkness is like a 5. This is a 4 out of 5. Yeah, we'll go with that.
Hell yeah. All right, now we finally caught up to Sarah. Let's move on to what's the name of this movie? Sinister.
Sinister?
Yeah, I got this mixed up with Insidious for like a week, and I still get them mixed up.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what happened to me too for some reason, and it's just wait, adjectives right for evil.
Same company, too.
Yeah.
Same. Yeah, so I'm gonna let Milton do the introduction, but I do have to say I was pleasantly surprised by this movie. I remember when this came out, I wrote it off because it was right at the beginning of that, like, here's 5 million generic ghost stories, spooky jump scares. I was like, fuck that
Yeah.
shit, I ain't watching that.
Mhm.
So I'm glad I watched it. But we'll get there. Milton, tell us about whatever the fuck this movie is called.
Sinister, released in 2012, is a horror film directed by Scott Derrickson, written by him as well as with C. Robert Cargill, who wrote Doctor Strange. The movie is basically about this family that occupies a more rural part of, I forget which state. This true crime writer, it wants to move into the home against his family's knowledge, into the home of a family that reportedly did a murder-suicide. And basically he discovers that things are not exactly what they appear to be as he uncovers more and more secrets that reveal the occult is at work. And in fact, there's something supernatural at play here.
Spooky ghosts scare me.
Yep.
Ooh.
Cool.
Boop.
Yeah, I like I said, I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. Sarah, this was your first time watching it, or have you seen this?
No. I've seen it before. Again, another film that was introduced to me by my dad.
Oh, cool.
So, yeah, when I first saw it, it was really good, and then I rewatched it, and it's still just as good.
I don't know, that's what I was going to ask. What you think of Sinister? So, has everybody else, this was their first movie?
I watched the first 10 minutes before watching this movie, like, a while ago, and I just, like, got distracted. But this is so by all intents and purposes, this is my first time watching it, I think.
Yeah, I went into this movie completely blind, and I was kind of impressed. This is what I want from these, like, here's the spook ghosts. Other than the obnoxious jump scares, like, just knock that shit off. God, I hate jump scares.
Momentum.
This is during that time where a lot of horror movies were doing that a lot.
I don't know what you
Switching to
mean
a
during
different
that time. We're still doing that shit.
I'd like to think it's past us, but of course it's not. But you have
Go watch The
there's some
Conjuring
people
3.
there, John.
There's 3 jump scares within 5 minutes.
I'd like to believe I exist in a world where we don't have to deal with problems like this, but
Well, you
we
don't.
do.
But yeah, Ethan Hawke is really good. And it's kind of funny that we're doing this movie with Ethan Hawke, because just a couple weeks ago, we did a movie with his daughter in it, Fear Street Part 1.
Yeah.
He is the girl at the beginning. He's trying to remember.
Really? Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, because she's I think she's gonna end up being like a big Netflix actress because she was in Stranger Things too.
Oh, and I haven't seen all of Stranger Things. Only seen the first episode, and that's it. So I didn't.
She
That's
comes in
cool.
season 3.
She seems to be a
Oh,
competent
that's
actress,
why.
so
Yeah, she's spoilers for Fear Street, but she's kind of like the Drew Barrymore role in that movie because that movie is very that
Oh,
person's like remember Scream? Yeah, I remember Scream. But anyway, yeah,
yeah.
this is kind of just a unravel a murder plot until it isn't.
Yep.
I really
Yeah.
like Bagul's design. He's like appropriately creepy, and they know how little to show and how much to show and how much lore to develop. Because it always usually makes sense. It doesn't like collapse on itself.
Trivia for this film, I was talking with Doolittle earlier. Apparently, he looks like Mick Thompson from Slipknot.
I was thinking that too.
Yeah.
I was like, this is like something out of Slipknot. This is awesome.
Yeah, they quote a little bit, I think, from like Norwegian black metal, I think. And the songs used during the whole movies, I believe, are Norwegian black metal songs, I think. Um, I'm not entirely sure. Which, by the way, those are probably the best parts of the movie by far, are the whole movie sequences, because they're just like so. Those are genuinely scary, except for the lawnmower scene, obviously. Those are genuinely like really scary, intense, and disturbing.
I fucking hate that one because I looked away for a second. I heard like the jump scare music. I was like, I missed something, so I rewound it to see what I missed, and somehow, even though I knew it was coming, it still fucking got me. Fucking jump scares, man.
It just gets that natural reaction out of you with that loud violence. But yeah, I was almost thinking it was going to be an art film just based on how it opened up.
Oh, I knew
the
from
whole
the
movie
poster
thing.
it wouldn't be an art film.
Well, I
Yeah.
hoped, but
It's got a little girl with the blood portrait of Bagul.
Mhm.
Awesome name, by the way. Like, can we get more like cool demon names in fiction again?
Yeah, it's a fun name.
I think it's kind of based off of the naming convention is kind of similar to what's in D&D, I think. Well, like with the prefix and add ghoul to it. But
Maybe.
Other inspirations for this character, like no, he is not actually like based off of like a real like pagan deity from back in the day. He's more or less inspired by a Moloch, who is like an actual Babylonian deity who eats children, and there's like some inspiration from Baal as well. From
Thank God I can
Canaanite
sleep at
faith.
night knowing he's not real.
No, I felt I was a little disappointed to learn that that he wasn't, but I still think a good design, good visual design. He's definitely built for the jump scare kind of feel with his general look.
The things I want to praise this movie for the most is it does have a good sense of tension. And then the scenes that are legitimately scary and not just, oh, you made me jump, is when like it'll just be a scene, right? Like Ethan Hawke is just doing something, but like something's in the corner that shouldn't be there, or something like that. Not here's a loud noise, so you'll jump like 6 feet out of your chair.
Oh, like with the ghost kids in the background, all that stuff is pretty freaky.
Yeah, like the ghost kid stuff was creepy. Bagul like pulling a Pennywise out of a projector is not. It's not scary. He just made me jump. What overall did you think, Sarah? It's been a minute since you've had a chance to talk.
Yeah, I thought it was great, and outside of that, I could kind of tell that production was also like The Evil Dead in terms of not having a lot of backing, and I found some numbers for budget that they did. They were filmed on a $3 million budget, but it grossed $87 million. And I found it interesting that The Evil Dead was filmed on a $1 million budget, and it grossed $29 million. Yeah. So I thought that connection between the two was really cool because these are really great original films, but they didn't have a lot of support in the beginning. and they did a lot of things with that. I also thought Cargill, the writer, I thought it was funny. He took a lot of inspiration for the script from his own life. So I was like, what are you doing in your own life for all of this stuff to
Lots and lots
be?
of white powder.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Baby
I
powder.
thought.
My question.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I thought. Oh, sorry.
Oh no, I'm good. You can go.
Oh, I was gonna say you mentioned I think a little bit ago in the server about the boxing, the kid being real.
Yeah. Yeah, his
And I thought,
Mhm.
oh no, I was just gonna say I thought that part was legitimately like scary. That was like the only jump scare.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. He mentioned when he came up with that scene, he was like, "Yeah, my son does that all the time because his son has night terrors, and he'll just like scream and stare at
Oh,
you." And I'm like,
well,
"Oh,
that's not
no."
funny at all.
No, it's a
No.
real thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Like,
will say the first one was a little too manufactured for me. It was like, what did he do? Go hide in that box so he could have a night terror and scare someone? But I also
No,
don't have
I think
experience
he's
with night terror, so
sleepwalking. Yeah, it's crazy.
yeah.
Crazy what happens.
Well,
Yeah,
I'm glad you mentioned that this movie has connections with Evil Dead because it has more than one actually. Uh, Raimi replaced the director of this movie for the upcoming Doctor Strange, which is why we paired these two movies together.
Yep.
Super excited for that movie.
Yes.
Speaking of the director, have you guys looked at this guy's other filmography?
Uh,
It's
not
rough.
very long. Yeah, it's
This man did Hellraiser 5.
yeah, direct to DVD movie, I think.
Yeah, that is the first one that was direct to DVD. It's
Mhm.
probably the best of his direct to DVD, so I'll give him credit for that. But his other,
Yeah,
you gotta start somewhere. So
that wasn't even his first movie. Uh, his his other credits include The Exorcism of Emily Rose, which I've heard was good, the remake of The Day the Earth Stood Still, and he's doing the Labyrinth sequel, apparently.
Oh,
the Jim Henson Labyrinth,
No, that
yeah.
other Labyrinth that everybody knows.
Pan's Labyrinth. I don't know.
No, he's
Why would I say the sequel to the Pan's Labyrinth is called The Labyrinth?
um
Hollywood has done weirder stuff before. But
he's doing an adaptation of a Joe Hill short story, which would be cool in the future.
Bermuda?
And yeah, Joe Hill is the son of Stephen King.
Oh, okay.
So that might be good. Who knows?
And I will say,
Yeah.
he seems to be a decent writer because he writes a lot of the movies that he directs. Now, he also wrote Sinister 2, which I have not heard such good things about. But everything I've heard about that movie seems like it's a director problem because he doesn't direct that one.
Yeah.
Which is a shame because I would love to see a good sequel to this. This was surprisingly good.
Yeah, I'm not sure how you do a sequel to this because this is kind of like a mystery. You know what I mean?
It'd just be a similar setup. Family moves into the house. Just mix up like why the family's there.
That's fair.
yeah, apparently the sequel like goes into more of the mythology behind Bagul. Like
Oh, that's
establishes
always a mistake.
That's a mistake.
yeah. It establishes the reason why he has the sewn mouth is because Moloch did it to him because Bagul, his younger brother, decided to just copy him and Moloch got mad.
That's
What?
cool, but like, I don't know. I think that's kind of cool because that's pretty serious like mythology, but like,
I
I
hate
don't
human
think I want to
nature.
explain.
We
know what
have
I
to
mean?
over explain everything. Just Bagul's creepy
Yeah.
little creeping thing. Just leave it at that.
I just rather just not even be explained. Just like you don't want to know why it's that way. It's really messed up. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna sound like a
but,
hypocrite because I like the Rob Zombie Halloween movie,
Well, yeah.
but I don't need every killer thing to have a grand, elaborate backstory. Stop it, Hollywood. Stop it.
And they say
Well,
no because we make money.
Especially if it's like tied to the original thing so closely together, right? I think that's another thing. Is that I get like because the Halloween remake at least is like
its own thing.
fairly it's just a different universe, yeah. So you can kind of separate that from the first one.
And I mean, it's still a better backstory than, oh, this cult is possessing him to do things for some reason.
Yeah, it's
But
more grounded.
yeah, I liked everyone in this movie for the most part. I thought the wife was a little irritating at times, but that might have just been because it's kind of from Ethan Hawke's point of view. So it's kind of irritating because we want him to succeed, and she just wants to get the fuck out of there.
I got a different
But I could
read.
also
was actually-
sympathize with her at points, especially when you find out the big twist, which if they're living in the murder house, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, I got a different read. I was actually on her side the whole time. Yeah, but
It's okay
But,
to be
yeah.
wrong.
But I was understanding Ethan Hawke's point of view because some writers like to do that. They like to immerse themselves in the environment and whatnot.
Well, I mean, he should have been up front with it.
Yeah, definitely.
Because I was like,
Well, I like
because
them-
when the movie started, sorry, dude, what's up?
No, you go ahead first.
I was just gonna say, when the movie starts and like the sheriff's harassing Ethan Hawke, I'm not even gonna bother to remember his name because I don't care that much.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, I don't approve of this. And I was like, what? Is there like something on the house? And I kind of forgot about it. And then they reveal like what it is. I was like, oh, that's what he. So that was a nice little effective twist.
Yeah, I like the moral with his character. The idea that like he's doing this just for like
Vanity.
I don't know. Yeah, but like more like because he's like like when he's like really scared or whatever, and she's like, what are you doing? Like, why are you like this right now? You haven't been like this forever. He's, the only reason why is because this, and that. And then he just starts kind of saying like, this will be my big break. Like this will be like my in cold blood, and that's not the reason you should be doing that kind of thing. You should be doing it for more of a pure kind of like, almost like in the case for like a true crime novel, something like In Cold Blood, it's for a greater truth and it's for a greater kind of understanding of the situation, justice. It's not for like that kind of like acceptance where like you're on talk shows or whatever and you're making money. You know what I mean? There should be something more pure. And I also like the idea that his legacy should be his family. Before like his like work, you know what I mean? Because his work, he's only doing it because of the money, at that point, which is interesting.
Yeah, there's definitely like an underlying theme of like the American success story almost possessing certain people, where people are overshadowed by, in a way, by how much society gives back, and they almost feel enslaved as if their entire identity is wrapped up in like this one thing that they did.
Yeah, I appreciated that quite a bit. I actually wish there was a bit more of that. But I thought that what we had was really good.
See, I thought the moral was don't have kids.
Otherwise, one will speak to the devil, and the devil will convince them to kill your family or something.
One might even say
Yeah.
the devil made them.
Or better yet, don't get a Super 8. Something, I don't know.
Oh,
Okay,
speaking
this is
of
great,
interesting
yeah.
trivia for this movie, crossovers. This was originally supposed to have a crossover with the Insidious franchise.
That doesn't
Uh,
surprise
yeah.
me.
Yeah. Let's see.
I'm actually kind of surprised that it didn't.
Well, because Sinister 2 didn't
Like
do so
Bomb,
well.
yeah.
Or not. No, yeah, Sinister. God damn it. I hate these fucking like one-word titles that are basically the same thing. But yeah, prior to the release of Insidious: The Last Key, Jason Blum had stated that a crossover film between Sinister and Insidious had previously been in development, tentatively entitled In Sinister. Because, that's not a terrible name or anything.
In Sinister? Yeah, it's not
Yes.
Sinister anymore.
And it's not Insidious. It's just another word that means evil. I don't even know if that's actually a word. But
No,
In
but it's like
Sinister, no.
invisible. If you're invisible, you're not visible. You're in
so it's
Sinister.
Sinister. God damn it, Hollywood.
That's a terrible title.
It's a
Oh my
origin
God.
story. He invades the dream of Freddy Krueger, and I don't know.
So, and I don't even know what Insidious is about, but it seems to me if Bagul is stuck in like tapes and pictures and shit, it'd be hard to cross him over with anyone because, like, how do you, you know, what like?
The girl from The Ring, maybe. I don't know.
Well, and I guess they did make a Ring versus the Grudge movie, so.
Well, that was the
Yeah.
inspiration from it to a certain degree with the Super 8 thing,
Mhm.
as well as
Oh, that's right,
apparently the
yeah.
filmmaker's nightmare, like that's where he took like the Super 8 in the attic kind of thing.
It should also be
Mhm.
noted that the sequel did not use the Super 8 stuff. Instead, it used a 16mm film, vinyl records, and ham radio.
Huh.
It's like you couldn't keep
Okay.
the best thing from your first movie. Fuck you.
That's
The
interesting.
radio thing sounds a little bizarre. Does he hear like heavy breathing or something?
Yes. It just says cool.
Well, it could be like with the Nine Inch Nails when they were promoting. Oh God, John's gonna know the name. I'm forgetting, but there is a record that came out, and one of the ways that Trent Reznor promoted it was he
Oh,
would
yeah.
have these like flash drives, I think, in the bathroom. If you found it, you could play like this like really disturbing audio of like someone calling the police or something like that. It could probably be like that, maybe, I don't know. But
Yeah, so apparently the ham radio is just like the ghost kids speak through it, which is weird because the first movie they're all like, shh.
Yeah.
But
Like,
okay.
I thought the conceit was like speak no evil, essentially. Or something.
Well, you
Yeah.
remember we have to make a sequel and we need something new, so fuck the rules.
No.
Oh. But yeah, I mean, this is another one where it's just kind of a simple, watch this guy figure out where it's going. At first, I thought it was going to be like a Shining thing, right? Like he just goes insane and is possessed by Bagul. But I appreciate this movie has like the balls to have like a bad ending.
Oh yeah.
Because I was like,
Yeah.
how are they going to resolve this in like 10 minutes and have a happy ending? And then they didn't. I was like, dude, sweet.
And it's a worthy good ending because it maintains the style of the home movie thing, especially at the end. It has a great sense of like ambient soundtrack and
Oh, I love that like drum
weird
beat
frame
so
effects.
much.
And then Bagul comes out of nowhere at the end, and you just are not thinking about that.
Spooky ghosts
You
scare
can,
me.
It can only be summoned if a Super 8 player is playing. Or something.
That was not the director's choice, but that was one of the producer's choices was to have that jump scare at the end.
Yeah.
And Scott Derrickson just said, "All right, sure, fine." And I wish that Scott Derrickson stuck with his guns.
Yeah,
A little bit
because
more. It was just left with all that,
it definitely seems like a studio decision to like have one more right at the very end for like no reason.
And it's the same exact one as earlier in the film. It's the same like shot of him coming up from the side or whatever when he's climbing up a ladder. And in the sequel, apparently they do that again at the end, and it's just reversed, so it's the other side instead.
Oh
Which is
my god.
ridiculous.
So is he like all CGI or is there actually like a dude playing?
Well, maybe. Well, I think in that particular shot it's CGI, but in the scene where he is with the little girl at the end, that is him.
Oh yeah, that would have to be a guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's CGI. The girl was CGI'd into holding the arms of a CGI character.
I
Like,
mean,
they're going
it's
backwards.
modern Hollywood. Like nothing
Mm.
surprises me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty much all I got. It was a solid like ghost story. It could have this. I only feel like I would give this a 5 if it wasn't for the stupid jump scares. Like, this is a great movie.
yeah.
But
Sometimes there's a time for a jump scare to happen, and it's fine.
that time is never. No, jump scares can be used effectively, but everything with the jump scares in this is like peak modern horror of, wasn't that spooky? And it's like, no.
You didn't have to do it. This could have been as scary as The Exorcist, I think. If
Yeah.
there weren't any jump scares. Which is what they're going for, actually. That was like one of their things.
And sometimes maybe drop the soundtrack so we listen to more silence. Like some scenes do that well, because especially
Yeah.
if we get the ambient tracks in the home movies, that's really the only music we need, because it works really well.
Yeah. Great cast. It has a good sense of tension until it doesn't. It's like jump scares just ruin any of the tension because then you just like you startled me and now I'm annoyed. Like fuck you, movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, Sarah, what other thoughts do you want to throw into the ring on this movie?
And it's already been mentioned, but this film is inspired by The Ring, which I saw a lot of, and it kind of, well, it's a great film. There were parts of it that I was just like, it's too much like The Ring for me to, distinguish between the two. So that was really the only thing I didn't like about it. But it was a good film overall, I thought.
Yeah. It's one of the problems with modern horrors. We're just pulling from so much other stuff, which isn't a bad thing, mind you. But sometimes you pull a little too much. I personally didn't have that, but I can definitely see where that would come. Milton, what about you?
I generally like this movie. I was genuinely spooked. And I was a bit more forgiving of some of the jump scares, but definitely the last one is not.
He
No.
jumped so hard he threw his headphones across
But no, I generally like this movie. I feel like it's weird looking at the filmography of Ethan Hawke. Like I think in my head of this like older person, it's like, hey, you know that nice kid who started Dead Poet Society? Yeah, he's making horror films now.
Well, usually it's funny, right? Because it's usually the reverse. It's like, hey, you remember that guy that was in like that Poet Society movie? Did you know before that he was in a horror movie?
Yeah, he was a little kid and he saw ghosts. And apparently sometimes ghosts don't know that they're dead. That's a career Haley Joel Osment right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, Doolittle, what are your final thoughts, and then we'll move into everyone's ratings?
Oh, I want to talk about the soundtrack because I thought the soundtrack is great, and that's my boy Christopher Young. Did a pretty good job once again. Yeah, I thought it was great. It's much different than I thought it would be. I thought it would be his traditional kind of gothic kind of like feel, but it was a bit more modernized, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Which I liked.
Not a lot of it stuck with me. I mean, maybe
No.
want to listen to that, on my own. But what did stick with me is the theme he uses towards the end. That's just like drums and kind of like some kind of vocal performance, and that I thought that was really cool.
It was great, yeah.
For any of you who don't know, Christopher Young scored Hellraiser, and I think that's one of the movies he's most well known for. He's done a lot of big movies, but
yeah, he also did Drag Me to Hell, The Grudge, Ghost Rider, Spider-Man 3. He is.
Yeah, but nobody
he has
cares
quite
about
a few.
Spider-Man 3.
Oh.
Spider-Man 3 soundtrack, I actually think it's one of the best superhero films.
Yeah, it's a good score.
Yeah.
Really good.
Sarah, have you ever seen Hellraiser? Oh my god. You really just need to come over to my house and I'm just going to show you like horror movies for 3 days.
Yeah, you should totally watch Hellraiser. It's awesome.
Hellraiser is
I'll
wonderful.
I'll see if the library has it. That's the one with the guy with like the pins in his face, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think it's somebody else.
No, that's
Okay.
Hellraiser.
So I know what it is. that I get points for that. But
Just
I've never
Yeah.
seen it.
don't watch it with anybody
You
who's
know-
squeamish.
Do you know anything about it? Like what it's about? Like
No.
that's
Mm-mm.
good. Don't know about it
But
before you watch it. 'cause
yeah,
it's-
we'll make some recommendations for Sarah after the show. But I just wanted to ask because Christopher Young, who scored this movie, also scores Hellraiser, and it has a wonderfully like gothic score to it.
yeah.
Yes. Chris Young, the
Yeah.
real legend.
I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 5 as well. This movie really surprised me. Maybe it's because I went in with like, oh, it's gonna be like a precursor to The Conjuring. It's gonna be boring, but no, I was thoroughly engaged throughout the whole thing. And if you haven't seen it, I would give it a shot. It's got some problems, some modern horror annoyances, but it's pretty good. Who wants to go next? Don't everybody jump at once.
Oh,
Milton, go ahead.
All right. Yeah, I like some of the conventions do like annoy me a little bit, but I was thoroughly engaged. I thought it had great sound engineering for what it does. I think the ending was like a little, but you know what? I'll give it a 3.75 out of 5.
That's so arbitrary, but okay.
Well, I wasn't sure if I wanted to give it a 4, but I thought it was better than the 3.5, so you
Just
know,
messing with
split the
you.
difference.
All right, we'll move on to Sarah. What is your score for this movie out of 5? What?
I give it a solid 4.
Awesome.
It kept me. Did you hear me?
I did now, yeah.
I give it a 4. It kept me engaged, but it doesn't fully get the 5 because it reminded me too much of The Ring.
Right on.
that's fair.
All right, Dulo. What are we giving this score today? This movie today?
Like a 3.5.
Okay.
Yeah, like 3.5 actually would be better. I'll do 3.5 out of 5 because I really did like it. It would actually probably be a 4 if there weren't like any jump scares, but I did think the jump scares got in the way a little bit. Watch it again though, because like that could easily change to a 4. I think. But
Yeah, for sure.
I did like it a lot while watching it, and I think I mentioned this before, but this makes me kind of sad that Scott Derrickson won't adapt Nightmare in the MCU because he did a good job with the Ghoul, and the Ghoul is kind of like a Doctor Strange villain in a way, like that. This is the kind of stuff Doctor Strange would fight in the Steve Ditko run, I think. So I think that's kind of sad that Derrickson won't do Nightmare, but that's okay though because Raimi's doing the sequel, and Raimi's perfect for crafting aspects of Doctor Strange, so I think it's going to be great.
Yeah, I'm excited for that.
And Raimi gets a second shot at Marvel. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
that was Insidious. Or no, shit. That was Sinister and The Evil Dead. See, I told you. I fucking hate those. Oh, we're just gonna, make a one title movie. So next week, Milton, we are doing Censor and A Quiet Place Part 2. Censor, it's been on my radar for a while. It's about the video nasty era, and it's kind of like a psychological horror about that era. So I'm curious to check that out. Sarah, it was a lot of fun having you on the show. You're always more than welcome to come back if you ever want to after this. But she's like, "Nah, I'm never coming back. Fuck you guys."
Thank you for coming on the
Yeah, I
show.
had
You
fun.
were great.
Yeah, it was a
For having
blast.
me.
Yeah, maybe we'll have you come back for like Evil Dead 2 or something. I want to do that at some point.
Yeah.
Have a revisit of that
Yeah.
movie.
And we're gonna get a very full
That'd be
house of
fun.
Evil Dead 2. Like everyone wants a piece of that movie.
Well, we're gonna limit that to 4 people, so it'll probably be like me, you, Austin, and Sarah, or Doolittle, one of the 2. I think any more than 4, and it's just like everybody's talking over each other. It's complete chaos, man. But we're gonna call it a night. throw this episode in the bag. It's done. And we'll be back next week with A Quiet Place Part 2 and Sinister. Thank you for watching, everyone.